Good? You hear me? Okay. So we've been discussing for a while at this point already, B'tachon and Ishtadlus. So I think it may be time for another topic, but a topic that's connected to what we've been talking about until now. Over the course of these past number of weeks, something has been brought up a number of times, which is the concept of Gilgulim, reincarnation, which is a very important subject to understand when it comes to Ishtadlus versus B'tachon, because what became clear, hopefully, over these number of weeks is that there is a certain, there are certain things that every single person, every single Jewish neshama, Jewish soul, and Jewish person has to accomplish and has to work through in their lifetime. So, with that being said, there's also hishtadlos and there's also free will. So we've been talking about how Hashem sort of has to balance these two aspects of reality. On the one hand, there are certain things which have to be accomplished, and on the other hand, there is such a thing as free will. So something that has been mentioned often is that one of the ways how Hashem works out the system is by using the concept of Gilgulim, which means that if a person, let's say for whatever reason, uses free will in such a way where he did not accomplish what he was supposed to accomplish. We'll talk about what are you supposed to accomplish again, but this will be part of our discussion. But if a person uses free will and does not accomplish what he needs to accomplish, then there's such a thing as being sent back down a second, a third, a 100th time theoretically in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And we've mentioned over I think it was last week we talked about how there are certain signs how a person has to know, a person can use to figure out what exactly he's supposed to accomplish in this lifetime. We talked about what makes a person happy, certain talents. But I think we have to spend a little bit of time on the topic in general, Gilgulim, because as we'll see, it's a very, very fundamental one. It's a very, very fundamental one. So to begin such a discussion with trepidation, obviously, because it's a very, very difficult and deep topic on our level, I think what we have to talk about at least this week, and we'll see if we could finish it. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it might take a couple weeks to at least even start. Is to figure out who exactly we are. When a person says I am hungry, I want to do this and this. Who am I? What is a person exactly? There's a story they say with the Baal Tanya. The Baal Tanya once had his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, as a small child on his lap, and the Tzemach Tzedek was playing, and the Tzemach Tzedek pulled on his beard, and he said Zaidi. So the Baal Tanya said, no, that's not Zaidi, that's Zaidi's beard. Okay, so Tzemach Tzedek, he's a smart kid, so he pulled on the Baal Tanya's arm, and he said Zaidi. And the Baal Tanya said, no, that's Zaidi's arm, that's not Zaidi. Then this went on with different, his jacket and so on, this is how it went. So once the Tzemach Tzedek finally caught what to do. So the kid got off his grandfather's lap, goes to the door, and starts playing with the hinges of the door, and the kid pretends to hurt his finger, to get his finger stuck in the door. And he starts screaming, Zaidi, Zaidi. And then, the Baal Tanya gets up quickly, Mendel, what's going on? Are you okay? And the kid says, that's Zaidi. That's Zaidi. So what is a person, really? Because the Baal Tanya is right. If a person identifies himself, who am I? I am my head? No, that's my head. That's not who I am. Who is a person? What is a person? So growing up in yeshiva, I'm sure we've all heard, I'm sure we're all familiar with this concept, that we're all composed of two things. There's the body and the soul, the neshama and the guf. And then there's other things that get thrown in the mix. There's the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. So who am I exactly? I'm the Yetzer Tov? Am I the Yetzer Hara? Maybe some of us in yeshiva felt that our Rebbeim were telling us that we are the Yetzer Hara. But so what is a person exactly? How many different components are there? Like the classical thing, a little angel on the right shoulder, a little angel on the left. So who are you? Who are you? So it's complicated. It's complicated. This is a discussion that's talked at great length by the Mekubalim, a great length. What is a person, and how many different factors are there going on within a person at all times? So generally speaking, it's as follows. Again, just to speak very, very quickly on our level. And again, I don't know if I'll be able to go through each different part of what a person is. In definitely not completely, but even to touch a little bit on each part today, I don't know. But we'll start like this. We all know we have a body, so that I don't think needs much explanation as far as the physical aspect of what a human being is, the DNA, the biology, just the physical aspect of what a person is, the guf. That doesn't need much explanation. We all have a body. Some are healthier than others, but generally speaking, they're all pretty much made in the same mold, relatively. So that's a body. That we don't need to talk about at great length. Now, as far as the other aspects of what comprise a person, the soul, if you will. So the truth is like this. So there's a very, very, very important teaching from the Arizal. It's not really from the Ari. It goes before the Ari as well. It's talked about in the Zohar. Ramesh Cardivero, who was one of the greatest Mekubalim of all time before the Ari, already talks about this. The Arizal just expanded on it. That every single Jew, again, great or small, tzaddik, Russia, it doesn't make a difference. If a person is a Jew, we have two separate souls. There are two separate souls. Soul number one, which is somewhat on the same par as the soul that's shared by all of humanity, is something that's called an animal soul. An nefesh habaham is an animal soul. That's a soul that all Jews have, and really all human beings have. And as I'll mention, as I'll try to explain very, very soon, that soul is really something that all animal life has. Everything, even angels have such a soul. I'll explain what that means in a second. There's the animal soul on one side. And now what's unique about the Jewish people is that on top of that animal soul, which again all of humanity shares, again there might be a little difference between the Jew and a non-Jew in that soul, but just generally speaking, all of humanity shares the animal soul. On top of that, the Jewish person is given a godly soul. Now we have to first discuss what is the animal soul. What is the animal soul? And then what is the godly soul on top of that? So what is an animal soul? So there's a sefer, again I mentioned one of the greatest Mekubalim, the Ramak, Moshe Cardivero. So Moshe Cardivero, he lived in Tzfat right before the Arizal. He was the leader of the Mekubalim in Tzfat right before the emergence of the Ari. He is considered to be one of the greatest Mekubalim of all time. He wrote his magnum opus, if you will, is called the Sefer Pardes Rimonim. The Pardes Rimonim is called the Pomegranate Orchard. That Sefer Pardes Rimonim is basically an encyclopedic work of all the Kabbalistic concepts that has developed until his time. So if you learn the Pardes Rimonim, you get a pretty good sense about what the body of work of Kabbalah was until the Arizal. And then the Arizal, expanded on it much, much further. In the Pardes Rimonim, the Ramak, Moshe Cardivero talks about the animal soul. And he explains the following way. And this is to explain what the animal soul is. Every single element of reality, every rock, every atom, every molecule, every single thing in reality, as we mentioned already a number of times, only exists because Hashem's light, Hashem's desire is being infused and pumped into that atom, to that molecule every single second. We talked about this. So if Hashem were to, stop willing, this computer that I'm speaking to, if Hashem were to stop willing this into existence, then every single molecule and atom that's comprised and creating this computer would cease to exist. Every single thing in reality, every element is only existing because there's a light of Hashem, there's the energy of Hashem that's being infused into that reality. That's one of the basic fundamental teachings of Torah. So the Ramak explains that if that's true, so theoretically, if let's say you have a rock on one hand, right? Now this rock, if it exists, it's because there's some aspect of Hashem's energy that's infused into this rock, giving it existence. On the other hand, you have, a cup of water. And also, the water exists because every single molecule of water is being infused with the light of Hashem, with the energy of Hashem. Said the Ramak, the concept of an animal soul is as follows. If you take enough elements and you combine them together to create a more sophisticated structure, right, then all those lights of Hashem, the energies of Hashem which were existing in each individual piece, just like in a physical way, when you take all the little pieces together, you create something more sophisticated. So too, the energy of Hashem that was infused in each and every specific piece, when they come together in a more sophisticated object, the energy of Hashem also becomes more sophisticated, so to speak. So, for example, the energy of Hashem that's giving existence, that exists within a rock, is somewhat very simple. It's very, very simple. The reason why an animal has a higher level of consciousness than a rock, not because it has like a soul or some deep thing to it. The reason is because the body of an animal is a more sophisticated object than a rock, meaning an animal is comprised of many, many different elements and many, many different moving parts to create such a thing, a body called an animal. So because the structure of the physical side of the animal is sophisticated, so therefore the energy of Hashem that's giving light to every specific part of this sophisticated, machine called an animal, that energy of Hashem is also more sophisticated than it is in a rock or in a cup of water. It's that higher level of sophistication, that higher level of Hashem's light that's being infused in this more sophisticated structure called an animal. That's what gives it its consciousness. And said the Ramak, that's exactly the source of consciousness for an animal. That's the source of consciousness for an angel. In other words, an angel and an animal are both very, very similar in the fact that their level of consciousness is existing due to the high level of sophistication of their bodies. I mean, just like an animal, the body of an animal is more sophisticated than a rock, and because of that, the level of energy of Hashem that has to be infused to give life to that object, to that animal, to the body of an animal, is also more sophisticated, and therefore it gives it a certain level of consciousness. So too it is with an angel. An angel is just, the body of an angel is that much more sophisticated than an animal, and therefore the consciousness that an angel experiences is all the more so sophisticated. This is what's called an animal soul. Just like an animal has, it's a human body as well. A human body, just the body itself of a person, is a very sophisticated structure. It's much more sophisticated than a cup of water. And it's because it's more sophisticated to the extent of its sophistication, to that extent, it needs the light of Hashem to be also sophisticated when it's giving life to such a body. So again, I know this is a little bit out there, but this is how the Ramak explains what an animal soul means. An animal soul is not like there's an empty shell and Hashem infuses a soul into it. An animal soul, in other words, is basically the light of Hashem that's through and through part of all elements of reality. It's just when you combine many simple elements to create something more sophisticated, then the light of Hashem, which you're also combining with these elements, also becomes more sophisticated, and it creates a consciousness. That's the consciousness of an animal, and that's the consciousness of even an angel, and that's the basic consciousness of what a human being is. The animal soul that every single person has, all humanity have, and all animals have, is different. What the purpose of that soul is to give a person a level of consciousness. It keeps the body functioning, it keeps the person alive, the heart pumping, a level of consciousness, his personality, his memory, everything that makes a person a person, what makes a human being unique and a human being, it's coming from the animal soul. But what the Ramak is explaining, though, however, is that this animal soul is basically in the same ballpark as the level of conscious by an animal as well. It's just more sophisticated. It's higher because the body of a human being is more sophisticated than an animal. So as far as this soul is concerned, it's very, very simple. Again, I mean, it's on the same ballpark as an animal, and therefore it doesn't make a human being, this supreme spiritual entity. It basically makes a human being a more sophisticated cow. That's pretty much what the animal soul does. As far as that soul is concerned, that very much is connected with the body. So again, I don't know if this is I don't know if I'm being clear 100%, but this is how the Ramak explains what the animal soul is. Now, on top of the animal soul, and this is where the higher level of what a Jew comes into play, is that on top of the animal soul, besides the basic level of godliness, which is infused in every element of reality, and therefore when a bunch of elements get together and become sophisticated, that level of Hashem's light and energy also becomes more sophisticated. On top of that, Hashem infused into a Jewish person, and specifically a Jewish person, something called a godly soul. Now, the godly soul that's infused within every single Jew is way, way beyond just the light of Hashem that's connected within rocks and within blades of grass and within water molecules. It's much more sophisticated than that. That godly soul, the main function of that is not to keep a person alive. The main function of that is to connect the person to the higher world. That's the main function of the godly soul. When it comes to Gulgul, when it comes to reincarnation, that's a discussion about the nature of the godly soul. And this is an important distinction to make. What keeps a person alive, the animal soul that keeps a person alive, that keeps all human beings alive, which doesn't make us that much more superior to animals, as far as that soul is concerned, it's earthly bound. That's an earthly bound soul. It's very much connected to the body, and because its whole purpose is just to keep the body functioning. And if the body, stops functioning, the person passes away, then the animal soul is insignificant. What makes a human being way beyond an animal, and even way beyond an angel, is the fact that besides the animal soul which we also have this godly soul, which acts as a bridge to connect us to Hashem in an unbelievably deep way. It's that godly soul which gives us our unique mission in life. It's that godly soul which gives us a unique connection to Hashem that no other Jew or no other people can experience. It's the godly soul that the discussion of Gugul comes. Everything that makes us unique and what makes the Jewish people special, it's all about the godly soul. It's all about the godly soul. So again, and now as far as how many, what's the nature of the godly soul, how many parts are there, and so on, we're going to be talking about that future in coming weeks, hopefully. But this is just to lay the groundwork. So again, so far we have three parts to ourselves. We have the physical body, fine. We have an animal soul which is intimately bound to the physical body, okay? And then infused within the vessel of the body, we have this unbelievably supreme, unfathomable concept which is called the godly soul. The godly soul. So far, it's basically three things: body, animal soul, pretty much connected, and godly soul. Now, where's the Wtntu and Yetzer Hara coming? So the Wtntu and Yetzer Hara are not who you are. That's not who you are. Who are you? Basically, when a person says I or I say you, it means three things. There's the body, there's the animal soul, and there's the godly soul. That's who a person is. The Wtntu and the Yetzer Hara are outside forces that are not who we are technically, that Hashem infused within us, that Hashem sort of puts within us to balance our free will. Let me explain. The body and the animal soul, because they're earthbound, they're very much drawn to physical life, very much drawn to physical life. A person naturally, when he's born, he has a body, he has an animal soul. The instincts of the animal soul are very animal-like. They're drawn to food, to pleasure, to relaxation. That's the animal soul is about. The godly soul, on the other hand, because it's not intimately connected with the body, it's coming from a much, much deeper place. So its natural instincts are more towards the spiritual, not more completely to the spiritual. The instincts of the soul is to daven, is to learn, to do mitzvahs. That's where the soul is coming from. The godly soul is coming from. So the person has to make a choice. The person has to make a choice. Are we going to give in and listen into the instincts of the animal soul, or are we going to listen to the instincts of the godly soul? To make a sort of a discussion, or within the person's conscience about what should I do, what should I not do. So Hashem infused within us, and again, these are very, very deep concepts, and I don't know if I'm being 100% clear with these things, and hopefully over the next few weeks it'll become clear. Hashem put within us a little malach. A malach, and again, a malach is not a human being is not a malach, but Hashem placed within our mind a little malach, a malach from the side of from the side of holiness, and a malach from the side of unholiness, from the side of impurity. These two malachim are not part of us. They're not who we are. When a person passes away, you are not your Yetzer Tov, and you are not your Yetzer Hara. A Yetzer Tov is an outside consciousness, a malach that Hashem has infused within our brain somewhere very, very deep inside, to create a conversation, to create a sort of outside force guiding us towards listening to the instincts of the godly soul, and the Yetzer Hara, which is also an outside force from the side of impurity, talking to us and trying to convince us to give in to the instincts of the animal soul. So the animal soul and godly soul are just instincts, pulling a person back and forth. But as far as the discussion, to decide what should I do, who should I listen to, that discussion that sometimes happens in our heads, that's coming from the world of malachim, a positive malach called the Yetzer Tov and a negative malach called the Yetzer Hara. Hashem put that within us to sort of give us the ability of making the decision properly, of giving us a place of debating which instinct to listen to. But hopefully a person listens to the instincts, to the advice of the Yetzer Tov, who's telling you to give in to the instincts of the godly soul. And then when a person makes such a decision, then good, then you become a tzaddik. Otherwise not. This is what a person is comprised of. So in other words, what a person is basically a body, an animal soul, and a godly soul. That's what a person is. As far as outside voices trying to convince us to do one thing over the other, those are outside forces called the Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara, coming from the world of angels, and that's what makes a person. When a person passes away, obviously the body is left behind. The animal soul is also pretty much left behind. What a person carries with him, into Olam Haba is the godly soul. Based on a person's choices down here, whether he gave into the instincts of the animal soul, whether he listened to the Sahara, so the godly soul is going to have to deal with those repercussions. And again, that's going to be part of the bigger discussion of what Gegulim are. I know that this is probably a little bit out there, I understand, so there's probably a lot of questions. But again, I just want to preface it by saying that it might have been confusing today, but it will become clear over the next coming weeks. So if there are any questions, then please feel free.
Hello?
Yeah, so I think, right, so Dovi, I think the question was, is there such a thing as a person having a bigger Yetzirah than other people? So the truth is like this, everyone is pretty much given a fair shot. However, there's no question that some people struggle in certain areas more than others. So, I mean, for example, you could have one person who doesn't struggle with keeping kosher. That's not his thing. He was never born with such temptations. He's not a foodie. He's not a person that really cares much about food. It's not his thing. So in the world of kosher, of eating kosher, you could say that person doesn't have such a Yetzer Hara. And that's true. However, that same person who might not be tempted with Burger King is very much tempted with Lashon Hara. So everyone has their thing. So there's no question that everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses. And every single person is given a certain area, and this is what we're going to be talking about when it comes to reincarnation and so on. Every single person is given one area of Yiddishkeit that they specifically need to struggle with. And again, I don't mean that they're destined to fail, but there's something that's some area of Yiddishkeit that their Yetzer Hara is very, very strong. And there's no question about it, that everyone has certain areas where there's much more of a pull. The Yetzer Hara seems to be convincing us more often and in a stronger way than other areas. And there's no question about it. Where that comes from, why is that? So that's going to be part of our discussion about, the specific, mission that each neshama has and so on. But there's no question, there is truth to that. And if a person finds himself more tempted than other people in a certain area, that's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of a mission in life. That's part of your situation, is that to deal with that specific area. And to have a person who struggles with all things, that's very, very rare. It's not going to be common. Most people have certain areas that they struggle with, and other areas that they don't struggle with, and other people have the opposite. So everything sort of evens out in the end. But there's no question that there are certain areas of a person's life where a person feels a stronger pull to the Yetzer Hara and to the animal soul, and in other areas he feels a stronger pull to the godly soul and to the Yetzer soul. There's no question about it, and that's natural, that's normal. That's completely part of being a human being, 100%.
Okay, if there's any other questions, anybody else? Okay, Shkoyach, thank you. So there's not going to be Shir next week, and the week after, I'll send out emails, but the week after that, we'll see. We have to play that by ear. So we might be off for 2 weeks, but I'll be in touch, okay?
Shkoyach, everyone.